Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm so excited to be here. You all are wonderful, and this is a beautiful, beautiful congregation. So thank you for having me. Reverend Marcus is a dear friend of mine, and I'm so honored that he asked me to speak today. So thank you. When I was around 12 years old, I was doing research online about different nature-based religions and happened to come across Wicca, a pagan religion. I remember getting really excited as I began to read about its beliefs and practices. They felt so in alignment with who I was, it was almost thrilling. My 12-year-old brain realized in that moment, oh, well, this must mean that I'm a Wiccan. So I naturally went downstairs and announced to my parents that I was Wiccan. I told them what I believed and why I felt connected to it, and my parents, being Unitarian Universalists, said, "Great, honey, that's super cool." And then suddenly I was Wiccan. I took these ideas to my UU congregation in New Jersey, now called Beacon, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Summit, and told my RE teachers about my new beliefs. This led to me giving a small sermonette for the broader congregation about my beliefs as a new Wiccan. Everyone's response was affirmative, excited, and curious, and people even approached me afterwards, telling me about their own connections and practices with the pagan religions. It was a magical experience. How many 12-year-olds get to have something like that happen to them? Not many. As I got older, I began taking neighboring faiths and coming of age. Both of those exposed me to different religions and beliefs. We went to temples, churches, mosques, and community spaces to learn about the different religions of the world. I was asked on numerous occasions, "What do you believe?" It was empowering. It opened my eyes to the possibilities of spirituality, and it set a fire of curiosity within me that continues to burn brightly. At the end of the day, most 12-year-old girls raised under a specific religion don't have the audacity or even the thought to research other religions and then announce their apparent conversion to their entire community. I admit that I am brave, but in truth, it was the welcome and openness of my UU congregation that allowed for something like that to happen. This is just one of many stories that I have that show the way that Unitarian Universalism created a safe home for me to discover who I was spiritually, and the reason why I believe in the UU faith so deeply as an important partner of the modern spiritual movement occurring across the country today. Right now, religions are shifting dramatically, and more people are leaving the traditional religious buildings in search for something different. Something perhaps more multi-religious and mystical. So when Reverend Marcus asked me the question that he hoped I would speak on for today, I was instantly captured and excited because it hit something personal within me. He asked, "What is it about Unitarian Universalism that makes it so important for this religion to engage with modern spirituality and the changing religious world?" Oof, I'm gonna ask that question again. What is it about Unitarian Universalism that makes it so important for this religion to engage with modern spirituality and the changing religious world? It's a big question. It's a fun question for me as well, because it was Unitarian Universalism that made it so easy and natural for me to be one of many engaging in this modern spiritual movement, whether I knew it or not, and whether the UUs knew it or not. I had my first experience of God in a mosque. I felt my deepest divine connection in San Pietro in Rome, staring at images of Mother Mary. I have found spiritual experiences in dance, art, and choreography. I lived in an ashram for almost a year, studying yogic principles and meditation, along with Hindu mythology and belief. I dove into witchcraft, New Age spiritual thought, and occult esoterica. I have lived in Costa Rica, learning about plant medicine and its indigenous beliefs and practices. I have been guided by Christianity, Catholicism, Buddhism, Islam, Tantra, Hinduism, Taoism, and paganism. And I pursued all of these spiritualities from a place of awareness around appropriation and privilege. Where do you think I got that from? I am a really good example of what the younger generation is doing with their spirituality right now, and what seems to be occurring across many generations. But there's an added twist. I had a healthy home and a healthy foundation to do all of this within. Modern spirituality is perhaps the child of the spiritual revolution of the 60s and 70s, eerily similar, and yet alive in an age of greater acceptance. What we are seeing right now, in my opinion, is beautiful and exciting. A heavy emphasis and curiosity around individual mystical growth, much like my own experience. Things like meditation and yoga, as well as Buddhist principles and practices, are rising fast. Paganism, witchcraft, and other earth-based spiritualities are also growing rapidly, with more people, especially young women and LGBTQIA folks, interested in the dynamic aliveness of the earth and the empowerment that magic and the occult can bring. Even young Christians are starting to lean towards a more mystical approach to Christianity, seeking to understand their faith from the lens of Jesus' work and ministry, rather than the stories and dogmas of the institution. Along with this, we are seeing the use of psychedelics and entheogens become one of the most common sources of spiritual experiences right now in the United States. People are using substances to explore alternate states of consciousness that oftentimes bring them into a unity with love, themselves, other living beings, and the earth. And then there is trauma, mental illness, and addiction, which have become deeply and forever intertwined with spirituality. Spirituality is no longer just a journey, but it is also healing and self-care. People are now more interested in attending festivals and sanghas, ecstatic dances, nonprofit transformative events, fire and drum circles, plant medicine ceremonies, or simply going into their backyard or on a nearby trailhead as sources of spiritual community and ceremonial religious experience. So what can Unitarian Universalism bring to this very colorful, very flavorful, perhaps a bit chaotic table? When I lived in Costa Rica, I was witnessing a lot of people on this individual mystical journey. People are flocking to the country right now to experience things like plant medicine, breathwork, yoga, meditation, and sound healing. Living in that hub was exciting for me, as I was able to experience so many different types of spiritualities and explore for myself what mystical experience meant to me. But I was also, unfortunately, seeing the negative effects of these solely individual mystical pursuits. There were communities, but they lacked structure and a deep awareness of moral values. I encountered serious cultural appropriation in Costa Rica, especially of indigenous communities and practices. I witnessed individuals who had pushed themselves so hard into altered states of consciousness that their mental health had been damaged. And I also saw an unhealthiness in the spiritual leaders. Many of them exhibited damaging and abusive power dynamics, condescension, and implicit hierarchy. All of this made me angry, to be quite honest, because it felt like justice was not present. And accountability wasn't either. I left Costa Rica for many reasons, one of which was the fact that there was no structure, no expectation of respect and thoughtfulness, and no community-held responsibility or accountability. And this is coming from someone who really doesn't like structure. I am in favor of the individual mystical journey, but I am also aware that we need the collective mystical journey. Religious organizations hold a purpose and a value to the modern spiritual movement in this way. I believe that we need to create a home for modern spirituality, a home with walls made of boundaries, floors made of morals, and a roof made of safety and accountability. Without a home, this new spirituality has the danger of spinning out of control. With too much of a restricting home, there is danger of it becoming suppressed and minimized. That's why I'm looking to all of you and this faith as leaders. Unitarian Universalism holds the profound potential to help this new, wayward spiritual movement find its floor, walls, and ceilings without losing its magic and revolutionary brilliance. UU has been walking that fine line between freedom of spiritual expression and community accountability and boundaries since its beginning. UU allows for people to pursue, create, invent, revise, leave behind, and grapple with their spirituality in the context of a community that is held together by its shared values and morals around relationships, not dogma. Unitarian Universalism tells each of us that we can be whoever we want to be, and that the most important thing is not what we believe spiritually, but rather how we choose to treat one another, our earth, and our greater world community. This form of togetherness is not only revolutionary, but I believe that it could help the modern spiritual movement both as an inspiration and as a support. There is, however, work to be done within this faith. We have to learn to change too. And I am another good example of this. You might have heard that I am an interfaith minister and not a UU one. And there is a reason with this, and I'm going to be honest with you because I think this is an important part of the conversation we should be having, especially when it comes to the younger generation. I was devoted to Unitarian Universalism up until the age of 19. At 19, I dropped out of college and began to have intense and profound spiritual experiences. I was changing dramatically, leaving behind the cultural ideas and frameworks of my family and culture, and seeking something deep within me that I had no words or understanding for. Ultimately, I needed a community and a faith that supported, nurtured, and provided mystical experience and ecstatic worship of the divine. I needed guidance, affirmation, and validation of my experiences. I moved away from this faith because I needed more upfront support and understanding of my mystical experiences. I needed more options than a Sunday service. There is good news, however, and that is that you all know how to think outside of the box. You know how to be welcoming and accepting of people different from you. You know how to hold many truths and even paradoxes in one space. You know how to build community around principles of respect and justice. You know how to move with the changing tides of our culture's ideas and morals. Now is your biggest challenge yet. As we watch religion as we know it change dramatically and seriously, how can this faith thrive and pave the way for a new, radical religious space? How can we build a home for modern spirituality to deepen its roots and become an even more positive force of spiritual growth in the world? Maybe it will all start when we decide to both teach and learn with this new movement. Perhaps we can start to look outward at the way other spiritual communities are forming. Perhaps we can study modern mystical experience and what is occurring in the younger generations. Perhaps we can use this faith's brilliant innovation, curiosity, and openness to dive deep into that world of the unknown. Unitarian Universalism has that skill set. It has the fertile ground and the foundation to create a home for modern spirituality. I am living proof of that. We just need to accept the challenge and say, okay, well, I thought I knew what was going on, but I really don't. So let's get curious. What would it look like to hold weekly meetings outside in nature? What would it look like to host weekly talks from spiritual teachers on interfaith forms of mystical experience? What would it look like to incorporate events and ceremonies that are centered exclusively around dance, art, and music? How can we engage with the rise in psychedelics as spiritual teachers? What would it look like to have a Sunday morning service where you sit in a circle? What are the ways we can include young folks searching for answers, searching for the holy, searching for love and community? What would it look like if we got creative and innovative and excited about new, wild, beautiful things? It's uncomfortable to try new things. It's uncomfortable to step outside of our comfort zones, but Unitarian Universalism has been doing that for a very long time. And now is its biggest challenge. It is the challenge to create a spiritual home for the next generation of spirituality. A home that is massive, inclusive, radical, and yet solid and firm. A home that allows all to come and prioritizes relationships, love, respect, goodness, community. My hope is that you build a home that looks nothing like you've ever seen before, and at the same time, everything you have known. My hope is that this congregation and this faith changes the lives of youth, young adults, adults, and elders in the same way it changed mine. Welcome, dear friends, to the dawn of the multi-religious age. You've been building this home all along. Thank you.